Hi guys, my name is Joseph Pisano, and I'm here to give you a quick rundown of the African American criticism in children's literature. Before I jump into that, I want to give you a brief background of the African American culture in the 1890s all the way to the 1990s. Most of you are probably thinking slavery, however slavery ended around the 1860s. On the other hand, it was clear that African Americans were not close to being equal to a white American near the 1890s. For example, in the early 1900s, Mississippi budgeted $3 for an African American student's education, while they budgeted $6 for a white student. Additionally, violence against African American society increased. Although slavery is not present, most African Americans received horrible treatment from the whites. In fact, segregation was at its peak during this era. African Americans were essentially looked at as non-citizens. More modern day African Americans have become equal in society and greatly benefit our society. One major route we see this through is through literature. For most of this presentation, I'll focus on one novel and relate that novel into history and eventually into modern era. A while back, around 1899, Helen Bannerman published a very controversial novel in The Story of Little Black Sambo. The plot revolves around a South Indian boy named Sambo. Sambo lives with his parents, Black Jumbo and Black Mumbo. One day in the woods, 4 hungry tigers came across Sambo, and for the tigers not to eat him, Sambo had to surrender his shoes, his clothes, and his umbrella. After some banter back and forth between Sambo and the tigers, as well as the tigers between each other, the tigers started to attack each other. Eventually, all 4 of them started chasing around, and they turned into butter, actual butter. So Sambo then retrieves his shoes, his umbrella, his clothes, as well as the butter. Once he returns home, Black Mumbo, his mother, uses that butter to make Sambo pancakes. This book turned out to be extremely controversial, and in fact Sambo is considered a derogatory term in some areas, and I do apologize if I offend anyone. The text became such a hit that many other countries and authors published their own versions that became more or less racist. Some of these novels displayed African American culture in a deeply negative aspect. The Story of the Little Black Sambo was advertised as a children's book and was even in a series called the Dumby Books for children. Essentially, the controversial book became very popular and turned into a very successful food chain named Sambo's. With over 1,100 restaurants in 47 states, Sambo's pitched itself as the American restaurant chain, all for the story of the Little Black Sambo. Throughout the restaurant were pictures of struggling African American children. As the term Sambo became a negative image, the restaurant switched most of the names of the restaurants to the Jolly Tiger. It was the same concept, just different name. Today there's only one Sambo remaining, and that is in California. It is interesting to see how one short children's story from the 1890s cultivated such hate and such success for a restaurant chain. Ultimately, African American culture has a huge influence on the children's literature, as Dr. Darwin Henderson pointed out in his most famous presentation of African American children's books. He preaches that their books are focused on family-sibling relationship with importance on oral traditions. He believes this because during the stages of slavery, families were broken up and had no trails of parents, siblings, or cousins. Most African Americans only relied on oral stories, jokes, games, because education was so rare and nothing could be deemed true. Also included in Dr. Henderson's presentation was the use of a few terms. Many experts believe that modern children's literature included culture hegemony, also known as dominance in the white culture. Another term mentioned was the social construction of race, which included the economic and social change of the African American society. Lastly, voice of color was mentioned. This idea creates that minority writers are in a better position to write about racial topics because they have experienced such views. The African American culture had a great influence on children's literature that we read and talk about today. Thank you.